Welcome to Bangla Shikha Classroom 2024, an endeavor of Poschim-Bongo Samogro Shikha Mission under the Education Department, Government of West Bengal. I am Mita Dotto, Assistant Teacher, Dokhineshwar Sri Sri Sharoda Devi Balika Vidya Mandir. Dear students, today we are going to do the lesson 2 of your book Bliss, which is Fable by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is a very beautiful poem. And before going into the poem, let us know something about the poet. He was born on May 25, 1803 and died when he was aged 78 on April 27, 1882. He was an American essayist, lecturer and poet, and he believed in the direct connection between man, nature and God. In the poem also we will see a reflection of this. He is a very popularly known man of letters in America, and he also was a social reformer who did good work for the society, for the improvement of the society. Two of his famous poems include Concord Hymn and Brahma. Fable is based on an imaginary conversation between the mountain and a squirrel. It's a beautiful conversation which gives a huge concept of his theory of the oversoul, where he poeticizes the moral lesson that every element in this universe has some importance, has its own place in the universe. Nothing is small, nothing is bigger, but each is of its own importance and nobody else can take that place. And we see on reading the poem that this great poet makes us feel our own wealth and our own worth. So before going into the poem, let us know what a fable is. You must have gone through Aesop's Golpo, the Aesop's fable, and as you have learnt them, as you have listened to them from your grandmothers, from your mother, father, you know that each of them are a story which gives us some moral lesson. So a fable is a short story or a poem that gives us some moral lesson, something that we learn, something that the lesson teaches us. The plot includes a simple conflict. Here the conflict is between a mountain and a squirrel. And there is a resolution at the end. There is some solution. The conflict ends in a good solution. The characters are animals. Usually the characters are animals in a fable or even inanimate objects. In this particular poem, we see the squirrel as an animal and inanimate object, that is the mountain. They symbolize human behavior. Whatever the characters may be, the animals or inanimate objects, they actually symbolizes human behavior. They have the qualities of human behaviors and human conversation. Every fable has a moral that arises from the story. That is how we started the definition or description of a fable, that it gives a moral. We learn something from it and we learn something from the story that it tells us. Now let us go into the synopsis line by line. So here lines 1 to 3. The mountain and the squirrel had a quarrel, and the former called the latter little prig. So one day the mountain and the squirrel, they quarreled. They had a conflict. The former means the previous one. So the previous one here is the mountain. So he calls the squirrel as little prig. Here the speaker states that there is a mountain and a squirrel and they got into an argument. So mountain is a location in itself. The mountain cannot move. It stands where it is and it is an inanimate object. The word Quarrel signifies that there is some reason of a problem between them. So there is a quarrel. So when do we quarrel? When do you quarrel with your friends? When both of you do not come to a single solution. When both of you don't think in the same manner about a thing, then you quarrel. So there is some point of conflict between the squirrel and the mountain for which they argue among themselves. The word prig breaks the rhyme and emphasizes the insult the mountain brought upon the squirrel. Now, what do you mean by a squirrel? What do you mean by a prig? A prig means one who behaves morally superior to the others. Now, as a mountain is static, cannot move, and you know a squirrel is very bubbly, so the squirrel thinks itself to be morally superior. That is how the mountain thinks it to be. So the mountain calls it the little prig. It is an irony that the mountain calls the squirrel prig. In reality, the mountain claims superiority of the squirrel. Now, it is an irony. So actually the mountain, we will see in the poem that the mountain itself thinks it to be very huge and tells that the squirrel is very tiny compared to itself. So it is an irony that when the mountain itself thinks it to be superior, bigger, but it calls the squirrel prig. It speaks out that the squirrel thinks itself to be more superior or morally superior. Then he says, Bun replied. Now, when the mountain says, little prig, what does the Bun reply? You are doubtless very big, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together to make up a year and a sphere. Now, here the speaker uses Bun to refer to the squirrel because, you know, in general, Bun means a rabbit, but here Bun is referred to as the squirrel. The squirrel begins by acknowledging the mountain. Now you see the squirrel, though it is called a prig, though it is so tiny, it acknowledges the greatness of the mountain. And it says that, of course, you are very big. Speak it clear that both good and bad and big and small combine to make the world. You are, of course, very big, but all sorts of things and weather. That means everything, good or bad, small or big, they all combine together and make the world. The world cannot be made only by squirrels. The world cannot be made only by mountains. It needs small things like the squirrel, big things like the mountain. It takes animate things like the squirrel, inanimate things like the mountain to make the whole world. Here, sphere means sphere means the whole world they mean. But all sorts of things and weathers must be taken together to make up a year and a sphere. So a sphere or the world is made up of animate, inanimate, big, small, good, bad, everything. And a year, it is made up of different types of weathers. We don't only have the summer, we don't only have the winter or rainy. So we see that the year is a mixture of all types of weather. So everything should be taken in together to speak about a thing. The mountain may be a huge presence, but is only a part of things taken in together. So the mountain is only a part of the whole world. It is not the whole world. The squirrel also has its existence there. The squirrel is attempting to set apart their differences and have a peaceful coexistence. So here we see actually the thought process of the squirrel, though it is very tiny, is much superior actually in reality. The squirrel is trying to set apart all the differences that exist between the hugeness of the mountain and the tininess of itself, and wants to have a very peaceful coexistence in the world where everybody is necessary, everything is necessary. The author wants to establish that whether big or small, They work together to balance nature. So we all know that there is a balance in nature. There is ecological balance in nature. There is physical balance in nature. There is mental balance in nature. So all of nature and our existence depends on the balance. And to balance that, whether big or small, all should be put in together to make this place a place of peaceful coexistence. Next, we go to lines 10 to 14. And I think it no disgrace to occupy my place. If I am not so large as you, you are not so small as I, and not half so spry. So the squirrel continues and speaks to the mountain, telling him that as because everything is necessary, the small and the big, so I don't think it's a dissatisfaction or a dishonor that I am small. So the squirrel does not feel dishonored of its position. The mountain is large with a role to play. The mountain is big and it has its own role to play. But even if the squirrel is small, it has its own role to play. The mountain's largeness is a truth, but it is also true that the mountain cannot move. The squirrel's tininess is the truth. That the squirrel is tiny is true. But the squirrel is so energetic and it can move around so actively. So that's the quality of the squirrel which the mountain doesn't have. So the squirrel says, if I am not so large as you, you are not so small as I. It's true that I am not so big as you, but you also cannot become so small as myself, and not half so spry, and not even half so. The squirrel is kind enough to say at least half so spry, but the mountain cannot move at all. It is not at all spry. So there are advantages of the mountain, there are disadvantages of the mountain. There are advantages of the squirrel and there are disadvantages of the squirrel. But what is true is that both are important to nature. Both are important for the balance in this world. Then again, lines 15 to 19, the bun continues, the squirrel continues. I will not deny you make a very pretty squirrel track. Talents differ, all is well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests in my back, neither can you crack a nut. So this is the message of the poem. Talents differ, all is well and wisely put. This is a very important message from the poem. Now, the squirrel now appreciates the good things of the mountain. It says that I will not deny that you make very pretty squirrel tracks. You know, there are lines above the, like the back of the squirrel, lines and layers. They look like tracks. And when you see a mountain from far away, in the mountain there are a lot of trees and there are tracks from where men, transport systems and all go. So when you look from a very far distance, they seem to look like a track on the back of the mountain. So the squirrel says that, yes, you have a very little squirrel track all over your body, all over the mountain. I am not denying that. It states that God has put all the creatures in proper place with different talents. So talents differ. You may have what I do not have, I may have what you do not have, but all is well and wisely put. But the Creator or God who has made you, who has made me, has put in different talents for us to use differently. And they are very, very intelligently put to whoever needs what. So you cannot go around like me cracking nuts, and I cannot carry forest on my back. The squirrel is a tiny little creature, so it cannot carry heavy forests on its back like the mountain. But the squirrel says to the mountain that you also cannot crack a nut. You must have seen the pictures of squirrel. They put both the forearms together and crack nuts and eat things. The mountain cannot do that. So everybody has got their unique capabilities and role to play. Everything has a reason to exist. Everyone has their own value in God's creation. They have their own roles to play. And if the large size is the mountain strength, lack of agility is its weakness. So the mountain is very huge, but it cannot move. So the advantage or strength of a mountain is its largeness. But what is its weakness? It has no agility. It cannot perform any activity. It cannot move like the squirrel. So this is what we come to know from these lines. So in totality, I will read out the poem. It's a beautiful poem. So together, let me read it to you, and please keep your books, keep your eyes on page number 12. The mountain and the squirrel had a quarrel, and the former called the latter little prig. Bun replied, "You are doubtless very big, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together to make up a year and a sphere. And I think it no disgrace to occupy my place. If I am not so large as you, you are not so small as I, and not half so spry. I will not deny you make a very pretty squirrel track. Talents differ. All is well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut." So this is the poem, and next we go to the message of this poem. When you read a poem, the common error is you do not follow the punctuation while reading a poem. Now, why is punctuation so important? Punctuation is important because when you follow a comma or a full stop, it makes the meaning of the poem more evident. When you overlook a comma, the line interpretation may change. So, follow all the punctuation to understand a poem. Pausing at incorrect places interrupts the understanding of the poem. So, if you don't follow punctuation and you overlook a comma and read a line as a whole, or you pause at incorrect places, it interrupts the understanding and the meaning of the poem. So, using the language of poetry in writing answers, when you write answers, you should not write in the poet's word. You should write in your own word. So make that a practice. Except for, as I told you in other lessons also, that when you write true and false and you are asked to give the supporting sentences, only then will you take down the lines from the sentences itself. Otherwise, let it be your own sentence. Improper construction, incorrect grammar, those needs to be practiced. A lot of grammar and writing skill needs to be practiced to overcome these errors. Not following instructions at the beginning of questions. So that is very, very important when you answer your Madhyamik questions, or for that any questions, you should read the instructions again and again before writing the answers. If the instructions are not followed properly, even when you have knowledge of the subject, your answers become wrong. So be very, very, very careful about it. Remedial measures can be reading the poem repeatedly, following punctuation, understanding the meanings of poetic language. In poems, a different language other than that used in the prose form is used. So you need to have a proper understanding of those language, to those particular language which are used in the poem form to understand the poem. Identifying the grammatical compromises made as a part of poetic license. So in poems, there are a lot of poetic grammatical compromises that are made to keep the rhyme properly. So when a poem is explained to you, please look after that you know the where the grammatical compromises have been made for poetic license. Writing what you read. This is for everything. This is a common suggestion for everything that you do. Make writing practice a habit to improve your construction and sentences. There is no other way to improve in it other than practicing what you read and practicing more and more the writing skills that you have in your syllabus. Now, types of questions in Madhyamik, there are correct alternatives of 1 mark. You have to be very careful in ticking the right answers. The true false with supporting answers quoted from the text that I mentioned to you, that you must quote the answers from the text. The lines on reading which you consider the true or the sentence to be true or the sentence to be false should be taken down ditto. And answering the questions, they have 2 marks. It's important that you write questions in your own words. Cause and effect, complete the sentences with information from the text. All these should be done in your own words as much as possible. Then you have phrasal verbs at the end of this fable lesson. You have done phrasal verbs in your lower classes, but again, to recapitulate, I have given this slide. Phrasal verbs are multi-word verbs. And you see, look after. Look is a basic verb and after is an adverb. Speak is a basic verb, up is a preposition. So phrasal verb consists of basic verb and another word or words, which is usually a preposition or an adverb. And what is important is both the different verb, adverb or word preposition combination, the semantic units like look may have a different meaning, after may have a different meaning, but when they come together, units cannot be understood based upon the meanings of the individual parts alone, but must be taken as a whole. So look may have a different meaning when singly used, after may have a different meaning when singly used, but taken together, it's called a phrasal verb and the meaning of it is different from the single word. Now again, you have voice change. So I tell you about the voice change method also. You know, in active voice, the subject comes first, then the object. The teacher opened the book. The teacher here is the subject and the book is the object. So what happens in the passive voice? The object comes first, then the subject. The book was opened by the teacher. Here the book becomes the subject and teacher comes to the object part. And now the very common rule that is followed is you have to bring the object at the beginning of the sentence, choose the correct be verb, change the verb into participle, add by with the subject. So diagrammatically, I've shown him, she helps him. So that him becomes the object, he is helped, the verb becomes the help, verb becomes helped, the correct be verb has been used and subject with the subject by has been used. So he is helped by her. The subject she has become her and a by is used. So she helps him becomes he is helped by her. A couple of exercises are given. Do that and do more exercises from your question wherever you get the question banks or from wherever you get more of the active voice questions. Try and turn them into passive voice. Practice will make you perfect. So keep on practicing. Conversion rule chart of pronouns. Take a note of this. Remember this so that you can apply it while changing the voice. Here is conversion rule chart of the auxiliary verbs. how it works in the active voice and what it becomes in the passive voice. Keep a note of this so that you can apply when you are changing the sentences into passive voice. Now here is an informal letter format that I have pointed down in, I have noted down in point forms for you to take a look and recapitulate. You also have paragraph writing, where paragraph writing comprises of a key sentence. You are given hints and you need to give proper, you need to connect those hints by properly attaching them and properly joining the sentences. Write sentences that begin in different ways. Like when you connect sentences, when you keep on using then, or thereafter. So you should know some words which you may be using to bring variation to your writing. And your sentences should be technically correct about spelling, construction, grammar, punctuation, everything. I have given some connecting phrases that you may be using for giving examples, to contrast, to compare. So take a note of these, keep this in your mind and apply them accordingly when you write any paragraph. Or for that, for any writing skills, you may use this chart as a reference for using the connecting phrases. I have given some assignments which may help you to prepare for your Madhyamik examinations. Keep a note of the writing, the letter, the informal letter that I have given, and a paragraph on friendship that I have given. Doing as much of varied writing types will help you to go and face the Madhyamik examination properly, because no matter how many topics you do, you may go and face a topic that you have never done before. But for that, what is important is practicing to do any topics by keeping in mind how to join the sentences, because for you a great advantage is that the hints are given. So you have something in front of you. If you have the practice of writing, the skill of writing, you are surely going to do very good in your examination. So that's all for today. Thank you, students, for your patient listening. Stay safe, study well, and all the best for your examination. Thank you so much.